In the 1998 World Cup, Argentina took on England in the round of 16, where a young David Beckham started for the English squad, but he received a red card during the match that ultimately contributed to England's demise in the penalty shootout. Beckham was the focal point of ire for all of England and was shamed by the masses for his mistake. Luckily though, 3 years later in October of 2001, with England needing a goal to send them to the 2002 World Cup, Beckham was taking a free kick, where he calmly struck a laser into the upper 90, sending England to the World Cup. After 10 years of battling through injuries and personal struggles, it looked like Tiger Woods' promising and historic golf career had come to a halt far too soon. But for one Sunday in April of 2019, Tiger was able to roar back as he won the Masters and put on the green jacket for the 5th time in his storied career. And who of course could forget the tale of the Virginia Cavaliers? After they succumbed to the biggest upset in college basketball history in 2018, there was a lot of talk about whether or not Virginia was even made for March. Well, luckily, the next year, the Cavs went on a miracle run in 2019 to win the tournament, putting all the doubters to rest. And now there's me. If you all remember, I made my March Madness picks last week, and they didn't go that great. There were some good moments, like my Oral Roberts pick coming to fruition, but also a lot of really bad misses. My national runner-up in Texas lost to Abilene Christian on day 2, and overall I'm left with 5 correct Sweet 16 picks and potentially 3 Elite 8 teams at best. Not where I want it to be, but the best thing about hitting rock bottom is that there's only one way to go. And that, my friends, is up. So now I present to you all the Bobby Douglas Redemption Bracket. Let's go. You know, it's really not easy for me to come up here and put on a brave face and give you my Sweet 16 picks after what I went through in the round of 64 and round of 32. Just an atrocious performance on my end, and for that I apologize. But here we are, round of 16, clean slate, new slate, blank slate. So let's go. I will give you my picks for the remaining 15 games we have left in this tournament, and hopefully we do a lot better than we did in the first edition of my bracket predictions. So here we go. With the West region, we have Gonzaga against Creighton. I will take Gonzaga here. Listen, I think Gonzaga did show a little bit of vulnerability against Oklahoma. I think against a more talented team that played like Oklahoma did, I think Gonzaga might be in trouble, but against Creighton, I don't really think they will be all that concerned. Creighton's a good team. I'm surprised they made it here. I had them losing in the first round, but Zagorowski's been really good for them. Denzel Mahoney, Damian Jefferson, they've all been really solid. Mitch Ballack, of course. But right now, I think Gonzaga has a little bit too much firepower for Creighton to handle. Creighton's been a little bit inconsistent this year. Gonzaga has been the definition of consistent. And so I have the Zags beating Creighton rather handily, if I may add. This is actually the largest spread of any Sweet 16 game, which I find totally amusing considering we have a 15 seed in the race here. But Gonzaga is currently a 13.5 point favorite over Creighton. I think that might be a little high, but then again, who am I to second guess against Gonzaga right now? So I will take the Zags. Other game in this region, we have USC and Oregon in a rematch of Pac-12 foes. USC won the first one by 14, and I like USC to win the second one here. I think Evan Mobley has really come out in this NCAA tournament as someone who just disrupts everything around the rim. And listen, with Mobley, he doesn't necessarily need to get his hand on every shot, but his mere presence around the basket alters every single shot taken by the opponent. I think Evan Mobley has really come into his own. I think USC has a lot of quality perimeter shot makers and guys like Drew Peterson and Taj Edey, and even Evan Mobley's brother in Isaiah. And so I like USC to get by Oregon here. Oregon has been inconsistent all year. I think they're a really talented team. I just don't think they're going to have an answer for Evan Mobley. And so I will take the Trojans moving on here. And then in the Elite 8 game in this region, we have Gonzaga, USC. I will take the Zags beating USC. I think Gonzaga is just a little bit too offensively gifted with Jalen Suggs, Andrew Nembhard, Corey Kispert, Drew Timme, Joel Ayayi. That's probably the best starting 5 in America. I think USC is really good. I just don't think they have the firepower to hang with Gonzaga. I have them going on to the Final Four. Moving on to the South region, we have Baylor against Villanova in the first game. And Villanova was a team I was really surprised to see come out of their little pod, given all the injuries they've had to go through with Gillespie. But I think this is where their run ends. I will take Baylor to beat Villanova here. I think Baylor's guards are just going to wreak havoc on an inexperienced Villanova backcourt. If Villanova is going to win this game, they're going to need to rely on their front court of Jeremiah Robinson-Earl and Jermaine Samuels. I think Baylor's bigs can keep them in check compared to what Villanova's guards will allow against Baylor's guards. I think Davion Mitchell has really established himself as a first-round pick and probably the best prospect on this Baylor team, and that includes Jared Butler. But overall, with Baylor, I think the defense is back. We saw it against Wisconsin. They were excellent. And so Baylor's starting to find its rhythm that it had before it went down to COVID back in February. So I will have Baylor moving on. And then in the other game, we have my favorite team in the tournament, Oral Roberts, against Arkansas. Listen, these two teams played earlier in the year, and Oral Roberts actually had a 10-point lead at halftime, and then the game was actually tied with around 9 minutes left. So Oral Roberts can compete with Arkansas, but I will take Arkansas here. I just really think that they're trending in the right direction right now. And Oral Roberts, listen, it's been a great story, but I think the second time around it usually favors the better overall team, and that in this case is Arkansas. So I will take the Razorbacks, setting up a Baylor-Arkansas Elite Eight matchup. And I will not waver. Now I will take the Baylor Bears getting to the Final Four over Arkansas. Again, I just trust their perimeter a lot more than Arkansas's. Arkansas has a tendency to be a little bit inconsistent. They can turn the ball over a little bit at times. I think Baylor is a safe play here. I have them moving on to the Final Four. All right, in the Midwest region, we have Loyola Chicago and Oregon State. Loyola Chicago looked awesome against Illinois. They looked like a top 10 team, as Ken Pom would have had you believe if you follow him. Oregon State, meanwhile, they surprised me too. I thought they were going to lose to Tennessee. They came out and blanked Tennessee and pretty much controlled all the action against Cade Cunningham and Oklahoma State. Still, though, I really like Loyola Chicago here. I think their defense is going to really slow down the shooters of Oregon State like Ethan Thompson and Jared Lucas. So I have Loyola Chicago here. And obviously, when you have Cam Krutwig, the baby Jokic, I'm not going to bet against Loyola Chicago here. I will take them. And then Syracuse-Houston. This game might be the most interesting one of the Sweet 16 for me. I could totally see it going either way. I'm going to take Houston here, though, and here's why. So obviously, Syracuse's zone has been really good in the tournament, and it always is. It always throws opponents for a loop. We saw it against West Virginia, and we saw it against San Diego State. Buddy Boeheim has been phenomenal from the outside, and they've had guys hit key shots like Joe Girard as well. With Houston, they obviously blew out Cleveland State, and then they almost lost to Rutgers, but managed to get by them. The thing I like about Houston in this matchup is that Houston's biggest strength correlates perfectly with Syracuse's biggest weakness. What I mean by that is that Houston is one of the best offensive rebounding teams in the country. They get something like 40% of their misses. As we all know, Syracuse is a putrid defensive rebounding team. It's really hard to rebound out of the zone. And so I think for Houston, the key to this game is going to be getting a lot of extra shots, which I think they will, and that's why I have Houston beating Syracuse. I just think Syracuse is running into a matchup nightmare in the Cougars this year. And then in the Elite Eight, we have Loyola Chicago and Houston. And I'm going to take Loyola Chicago. Listen, I think their defense is really legit. Houston isn't a particularly gifted offensive team in terms of shooting the ball. Loyola Chicago's defense is one of the most disciplined in the country, as we saw against Illinois. And so I think Loyola Chicago and Porter Moser will have a really good strategy on how to box out Houston and control the glass. And listen, I think Loyola Chicago here controls the pace. I think they control the boards in the best possible way that they can. And so I think Loyola Chicago beats Houston here to get to the Final Four. They're second in the last three tournaments. All right, here we go. We have Michigan and Florida State. I am going to take Michigan here. I know I had them losing to LSU in my original bracket, but I really like how Eli Brooks and Chauncey Brown stepped up for them in that game. Florida State, they looked good against Colorado. They struggled against UNCG, but managed to pull out a victory. But with Michigan, I think I just trust their guards a little bit more. MJ Walker, Scotty Barnes, Raekwon Evans, they're all good players, but I'm not sure if I can trust them to not turn the ball over or to hit shots. Michigan, on the other hand, I really trust Chauncey Brown. I trust Eli Brooks. I trust Mike Smith. And so I'm taking Michigan here just because I can't really buy into Florida State after I saw them in person where they underwhelmed, and then obviously in the ACC tournament as well, where they just looked horrible offensively. So I will take the Wolverines here beating Florida State. And then in the final Sweet 16 matchup, we have UCLA and Alabama. I've really been impressed with UCLA, I gotta say. I love Jaime Jaquez and I love Johnny Juzang. Those guys have been outstanding for them. I'm going to take Alabama here. If you watch the Maryland game, they just eviscerated Maryland. It was close-ish for about 22 minutes, and then immediately, John Petty Jr., 3, Jaden Shackelford, 3, Josh Primo, 3, bang, again, and again. And so I really like Alabama here to beat UCLA and get to the Elite Eight. And then in the Final Four, I will also take the Crimson Tide beating Michigan. Michigan, this is where the absence of Isaiah Livers comes back to hurt them. Alabama is just rolling right now. The Tide are rolling, as one would say, and I have them getting to the Final Four. I really am starting to buy their perimeter-oriented attack, and so I will have them beating Michigan here. Controlling Hunter Dickinson will be a tall task, but I think Alabama's physical, stout perimeter defense will be enough to disrupt the other players around Dickinson enough for them to move on here. In the Final Four, we have Gonzaga and Alabama. I'm going to take Alabama here. Listen, Alabama won't be afraid of playing at Gonzaga's pace. They can hit threes with Gonzaga. They can operate offensively on good nights like Gonzaga. And they also have a better defense than Gonzaga. So I think Alabama's kind of tough, rugged perimeter defense might get to some of Gonzaga's guards, even though Jalen Suggs loves to play physical. I do think Alabama will find some success in stopping Drew Timme to the best degree that you can. And so I have the Crimson Tide beating Gonzaga here, and Gonzaga's perfect season will come to an end in the Final Four on April 3rd. On the other side, I have Baylor and Loyola Chicago. I'm not going to back off of Baylor now. I will have them beating Loyola Chicago. I think defensively, Baylor is really going to be able to speed up Loyola Chicago. They're a team that likes to play a little bit slower. I think Davion Mitchell, Jared Butler, Maceo Teague are guys that can really get into the offense's skin. So I expect that Baylor's defensive prowess and three-point shooting will be enough to get by Loyola Chicago here. And in the title game here, we have Alabama and Baylor in a Jared Butler revenge game. Remember, Jared Butler actually enrolled at Alabama before going to Baylor about a month later. So this will be a fun little game to have in a title game. Really good perimeter cohorts on both sides. Obviously, you have Javon Quinterly, Jaden Shackelford, John Petty Jr., Herb Jones, all those guys for Alabama, and then obviously the big four with Matt Meyer and Mark Vital for Baylor. I'm going to take Baylor here to beat Alabama. Listen, I just really buy their defense. I buy the culture that they've installed there, and so I will have Baylor beating Alabama. I think Baylor is one of the few teams that could match Alabama's three-point shooting, and I think Baylor will do enough defensively to stifle a little bit of what Alabama does. This is what I have. I have Baylor beating Alabama in the title game. This is going to be a very high-scoring game. I'm going to say it'll be 84 Baylor to 78 Alabama, and that's it. I will submit my picks there. Let's see if anything happens. There we go. Yep, there's my Baylor thing. I'll X out of that. So there it is. This is my entire bracket. And yeah, that's what I got for you guys today. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I won't recommend putting money on this, even though I already have. But just to give you my thoughts on the Sweet 16 and the games moving forward, this is what I got. Baylor beating Alabama in the title game with a score of 84 to 78. And yeah, that's it. Thank you guys for watching. Go enjoy the Sweet 16, Elite 8, and Final Four. And I will see you soon for more draft and college basketball videos. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.